to a brand new episode here on Britain's Farm. So we've got the Massey and the drill out again today as we still continue our spring drilling, and we should hopefully get it done in this episode today. That's the big hope, is that we'll get it done in this episode, and get it rolled as well, hopefully, and then as I say, we'll be sort of on the race down to harvest then. So as I said, I think it was the previous episode or the episode before, this field and the field next door are going to be becoming rice in sort of, welcoming in. I still didn't say that right, but anyway, you know what I mean. Welcoming in 2025. So I thought we'd do that. So you have to forgive my voice this morning, a little bit croaky. Oh no, it looks as if I may have drilled the. Oh no, I haven't. Have I? No, I haven't. I thought I drilled it then. So yesterday was the day that I went to. So this would be like last week for you guys. Was the day that I went to London, and I don't know, feeling really croaky, and it's odd because I didn't. Well, apart from obviously doctors and nurses and people like that, but otherwise I didn't really talk to anyone. That's sort of the beauty of sort of travelling on a train for Lord knows how long. You don't get to chat to no one. But yeah, I just woke up today really croaky, so hopefully I haven't caught some hideous disease from the hospital. I'm sure I haven't. But yeah, it was a long day yesterday, and I'm extremely tired today. I went to bed early last night as well, because I was obviously extremely tired last night, and went to bed, as I say, early, but woke up today and I still feel as tired as what I did when I went to bed last night. So it's not that the enthusiasm isn't there, it's just it's a bit whiny. But we'll find out over the next few weeks whether anything was wrong. There was a bit of a cock up at the hospital because I got there, went to the department where I sort of have to go, and went up in the lift, sort of walked across the hospital and got to where I sort of usually am, sort of thing, and got in there, went up to the desk, a very nice lady, name, date of birth, not hello, how are you, name, date of birth. Okay, I'm not cattle, I've not come to be slaughtered. I'm a human being, you could say hello to me first. That's what I was like. So I gave her my name, gave her my date of birth, and she goes, sorry, what was your name again? I thought, Christ, you really, your memory's not very good. So I told her my name again, and she goes, and your date of birth again? So I told her my date of birth again, and she's like looking, and she goes, can you write your name and date of birth down for me? And so I sort of looked at her, and she went, well, you're not here. She said, so I may well be mishearing you wrong. So I was like, okay, fair enough. So wrote them down, gave her. She goes, you're not down today. So I said, well, today is the day of my appointment. And she said, she goes, no, not today. So I showed her my phone. I said, yes, today. So she's like, oh, yeah, today. I'm like, yeah, I know. You don't think I'd have got up early this morning, travelled halfway across blooming England to get here if I wasn't meant to be? So Jesus, I'd much rather be at home doing my usual sort of stuff and routine, And anyway, in the end, she was like, well, clearly your appointment was today. So I'm like, well, yeah. So she said, but you're not down, so therefore I can't book you in. So therefore, because I can't book you in, no one will see you because you're not down. I said, but you can see that my appointment was today. She goes, yes, I know I can see it's today, but no one's booked it in on the system. And I said, well, clearly someone has booked it in on the system, hence the reason why I was given the appointment. So she goes, no. And I said, look, I said, no offence. I said, but I've travelled a very long way. I said, a great deal of expense to myself. I said, now that I'm here, I said, as much as I don't want to be here, I said, like, now that I am here, I may as well, sort of see everyone that I'm due to see. But no, she refused. No, your name's not down. You're not coming in. And I was like, okay. So she goes, you've got an ECG today. So I said, so I am down. So she went, well, you're down somewhere else, but you're not down here. So I said, right. So she said, you need to go downstairs for that. I said, well, I normally have that done in here. So she's like, no, you got to go downstairs for that. So I was like, okay. So goes off, goes to the next place. I'm thinking, if I go in there and he says I'm not on the system, there's gonna be a murder. So anyway, the man at first, no, you're not down. Then he goes, oh yeah, actually I can see you. So I was like, good boy. I was like, in my head I said that. I wasn't a psycho. In my head I was like, good boy, I know you can see that. So he goes, yeah. He goes, and then you're also down for a liver ultrasound today. So I said, yeah. I said, that's right. So I said, incidentally, I said, can you see other people's systems? So he said, yeah. I said, can you go onto the Gooch system? I said, and see whether I'm down today, because the lady upstairs was very insistent that I wasn't. I said, and I know I am. I said, because obviously I've got the appointment on my phone, because they text me to confirm that the appointment had been made, and they also texted me yesterday to say, so Monday that my appointment, not to forget my appointment tomorrow, sort of thing. So he looked down, so he went, no, you're not down there. So I was like, okay, fair enough. I said, all right, mate, cheers. I said, no problem. So he said, do you want me to see if I can sort it? I said, no, it's all right. I said, if I'm not down, I'm not down. I said, but it's just a little bit frustrating because obviously I've come a long way. So, but no problem. I said, no problem. So anyway, I sat there and then went in to have my ECG done, which it's so quick. But I got chatting to the nurse in there, and she was about, I don't know, I bet she was in her 50s, and I was sort of chatting away, and I was sort of explaining to her what had happened, and she was like, oh, you're the fourth person today to say that. And I'm like, and I said, oh right, I said, that's not really a consolation if I'm honest. So she went, well no, she said, because those other three people, she said, they were from London, so she said, like, it's a 5-minute bus ride for them. She said, like, you've come, she said, like, all the way from sort of Lincolnshire. She said, like, you've driven, you've sort of either driven or travelled half the country to get here. I was like, I know. So well, a quarter of the country, I would have guessed. But so I said, yeah, I know. I said, it's a bit annoying, it's a bit frustrating. She goes, I bet. She goes, I'd be livid. I said, I'm not livid. I said, I think life's a little bit too short for livid. I said, but I am annoyed. I said, I'll give you that much. Anyway, we have that, and we sort of have a good old chat. And I'm like, I said, look, because we were sort of chatting away like we were old friends, and I said, I'm sure you've got lots of other. She goes, make them wait, don't worry about it. I was laughing. She goes, "Are you all right?" She said, "I've only got one more patient this afternoon." She said, and that's not for another 30 minutes. So she said, like, you're okay. So she said, anyway, she said, you're quite an interesting young chap. I was like, am I? But yeah, so we was having a good laugh and a joke. But yeah, I went and then did my liver ultrasound, and yeah, went home. Went home. So the thing as well about the liver ultrasound was, so we're going through it. We're getting towards the end of the ultrasound, and she says to me, she says, "You all right?" And I says, "Yeah, I'm fine." So she says, "Good." She said, "I just need to check your bladder." So I said, "Okay." I said, can I make a slight request? She said, yeah. So I said, can you not press too hard? So she said, why? I said, I'm busting for a wee. She said, why haven't you been to the toilet? I said, because my letter says that I can't go to the toilet and I can't have anything to eat and drink before my thingy. So she went, you could have gone to the toilet if you'd have wanted to. I said, yeah, but I got the letter in my pocket and it says that I must not eat or drink or go to the toilet on the day of my test until I've had the test, and then I'm free to do as I wish. She said, oh, I don't know why it says that. She said, I'll do it. She said, and then show me the letter. So I said, okay. So anyway, so she did it, and to be fair, she was as gentle as she could be with it. Because boy, was I'd been up since like 5:30. I was desperate. It was like, that was like sort of, I think it's about 20 to 3 in the afternoon, and I was really busting, like, you know, proper bloody, you know, every time when I was laying on the bed I kept crossing my legs. She goes, can you uncross your feet please? She said, like, I need you to sort of lay, you know, sort of perfectly flat and normal. And I was like, okay. And then when she said, like, I'm gonna just look at your bladder, and I'm like, can you not press too hard? Otherwise me and you are gonna get wet. And but yeah, no, she'd look at the letter afterwards, and she was like, she goes, I don't know why it says all that. She says, no, you was absolutely fine. She said, you only have to not eat and drink and go to the loo if we actually think there is something actually wrong with, you know, your liver and bladder, and therefore we need it to be sort of enlarged so that we can see it better. She said, but yours was just to make sure that your medication that you're on is not causing any issues. And so I said, okay, right, you know, fair enough. So she said, like, I'm sorry about that. So I said, well, it's not your fault. I said, unless you wrote the letter. And she went, no, I didn't write the letter. She said, right, go. She said, go to the toilet. She said, and go and get something to eat and drink as well. You must be starving. I don't know if my microphone has just picked that up, but I have just had what I'm assuming is either an F-15. Hang on, it's coming round again. No, a Typhoon. Is it a Typhoon or I'm not very good on my military planes, or a Eurofighter. It's got the two little wings right on the front, and it is so low. I don't know whether my microphone just picked that up as it went past the window. It's just circling. It's really, really low. But yeah, so so that was my adventurous day out. Which wasn't really adventurous, really, if I'm honest. But you know, I'll tell you what, we might have to have a little ride out and fetch the telehandler, because we're going to run out of seed. I mean, the hope is that in this, because this is going to be a bit of a chatty video, I'm not going to chat about hospital no more, but I'm hoping that I was hoping that we was going to have enough seed, but clearly not. So yeah, so a day or two ago, I sort of didn't say anything at the time, but I can't remember if it was the end of last week or if it was the weekend, because this week's been a bit of a blur, because I've been sort of really stressed, because I get really sort of, you know, stressed about going to hospital, because I'm terrified they're going to go, oh, it's terminal. It's done, it's gone, it's been, you're too late, you know. But thankfully that wasn't the case. So I sort of, this week is a bit of a mushed blur, and I can't sort of you know, sort of focus properly, because of, as I say, my anxieties have been sort of through the roof. But I think that's why I'm so tired today, because I think they're sort of now coming out of me, and because it does make me really exhausted. But anyway, at some point, it was either Friday or the weekend, end of last week, weekend, had some very sad news that one of the lad that I worked with on the farm was killed in a farm accident. And I mean, when I sort of worked on the farm and what have you, we had injuries. We had serious injuries. On my time on the farm, and at the time, and I don't know whether this statistic still applies, but at the time, so that would have been back in 2016, in my last year on the farm, when we had our two most serious injuries. The statistics said that more people in 2015 / 2000 up to that point in 2016 died in farm related accidents than actually died in the British military, and that had applied for the previous 5 years. So in the 5 years leading up to 2016, more people died working on a farm than they did in the British military, who were serving in some war-torn countries and some pretty dangerous places on earth. And me going to work every day, according to, because I was sort of telling my ex the other day, because obviously she knew quite a few of the people on the farm, and I was telling her, and she said, I never said anything, in all the years that you worked on a farm. She said, but I used to hate it. And I said, why? And she goes, because she said, I knew it was a dangerous job, she said, I'd looked it up and everything, and she said, although I never said anything, she said, I just used to pray that you would. She said it was as bad as if you'd been in the army or the police force or something like that. She said, I just prayed every day that you went out to work, that you came home again. And I think it kind of needs bringing up, and I think it kind of needs highlighting, because I'm guessing that 99% of the people that watch my channel and every other farm sim channel is because in some way or other they're obviously interested in farming and probably work on farms or whatever. And if you work on a farm, it may be that you don't know the statistic, but you know how sort of dangerous it can be. Now, I did a few things on the farm that, looking back now, were utterly stupid, but at the time I didn't really see the danger, and I didn't really see the relevance of what I was doing. I sort of did what I did in the moment of doing my work and didn't really give it much thought or anything like that. And so I thought this little chatty video, I don't know how long this video is going to be, because I am running dramatically out of memory again on my computer. So at some point in this video I think I'm going to get the memory warning, in which case I'm going to have to obviously end the video, otherwise this isn't going to be a video and you've not seen all this. But anyway, so a few things that happened. So on the first farm that I worked with, I went to so in the winter, when there wasn't so much, because it was a small family run farm, in the winter when there wasn't so much for me to do, sometimes I would go out and do like winter ploughing for other farms. And one of the farms that I used to go to a lot back then was Stratstead Estates in Kings Lynn, or near Kings Lynn. But yeah, I used to go to the Stratstead Estate, and I used to do winter ploughing there. I used to do dike cutting, hedge cutting, and stuff like that. With the flower mowers and the the hedge cutters and that on the tractors. And as I say, winter ploughing. I used to go up there and I used to do, as I say, that's sort of what I would do for, sometimes a few days, sometimes a few weeks, or a month or so, but depending on what they had, that's what I would go up there and do. And when I was there, they obviously, being in an estate, were very busy. They were very big, and they'd have lorries in and out all the time. I don't know what their acreage was or anything like that, but I just know that it was a very, very busy farm. And one day I was working there, and I was working on a field that backed onto their farm, their main farm, and from that field I could see all the way across the farmyard because it was open on the end that I was working. And I see this lorry pull in. I see the telehandler driver who was going to load him with wheat go over to him. He backed up. The lorry backed up to where, obviously, the telehandler, sort of bloke. I can't remember any of the people's names. As I said, sort of didn't really work with them as such. I just worked there, and I see, he backed up to, sort of where he wanted him, sort of thing. And next thing I know, the trailer's come up a little bit, and the back door, as it was on a swing, and it's opened, and he's gone, and he's put a wedge, like a chunk of wood, on the door and on the frame of the trailer to keep the door open. And he's in there, and he was like pulling something out with his hands, whether it was leaves or what it was, I don't know. I just don't know. But he was working, and the bit of wood that he had wedged on the door came away, and because the door swung and slammed shut, and he was still obviously inside the door, if you like, sort of cleaning out and doing whatever he was doing, and he was killed instantly. And there was a bit, the air ambulance. Well, I don't think actually he was killed instantly, but the air ambulances came. Obviously ambulances, fire engine, police and what have you. And yeah, as I say, he later, I think, in the air ambulance on the way to hospital, died of his injuries. So that was sort of the worst incident that I ever had. So the first farm that I actually worked on, they were coming out of potatoes. So they were, that the year that I joined was the year before I joined, so in 2006, that was their last year that they harvested potatoes. In 2007, when I was there, when I joined the farm, they were selling their potato harvesters. It was a Grimmy, but it was one of the really old-fashioned Grimmies where it had like it was all covered. It had like a white tent over it, because I can't, like canopy over it, but it was like a tent, because it was, you went inside the tent, and then and the women used to stand on there and pick off and what have you, while the the potato harvester was harvesting potatoes, obviously, and they would pick off, and then it would go into like a big so not unlike the GT170, the Grimmy GT170 that had an unloading belt, it might be just quicker for me to drive all the way down to the farm and just refill, and then drive all the way back, rather than having to walk all the way back, get the telly, and then drive it all the way back. Yeah, so it had, as I say, it had like a big box on the side of it, and you'd, like a tank almost, and you would fill it up, and then you know, on the ends of the fields, because the trailers wouldn't run alongside the potato harvester. On the ends of the fields at each end there would be a tractor and trailer, and he would just empty each end of the field. And that was how they did it. Now, I never did it because, as I say, I didn't work there, but I'd seen them do it lots of times because, as I say, a lot of their fields surrounded the house where I lived and grew up as a child, and so you got to see it, you know. So I knew how they did it. I just was never a part of it. Anyway, the year I was there, it was one winter, and they were selling the, or late autumn probably, and they were selling the Tate harvester. And it was at the so it was at farm 2, so it was at the little farm. It was in the sort of big shed that they had there, and that's where they used to sort of dump all the stuff where, you know, they weren't necessarily going to be using anymore. And the boss man said to me, he said, I want you to go down there, and he said, like, I need you to like proper clean it out. He said, like, it needs to be absolutely spotless. I want you to grease it all. I want you to, you know, to clean it all out and then grease it all and what have you, and like do a proper job on it. So I was like, okay. So he said, I don't mind if you're down there for a few days doing it. He said, like, I really don't. He said, I would rather it take you a few days and you get it done like in a few hours, because he said, if you did, you know, he said, I want a proper job done on it. So I was like, okay. So I went down there. Anyway, second day, I was cleaning the insides of the potato harvester. So it meant like going inside the tent, as I called it, going inside the tent and being laying across like the webbing and doing the like the taking all the pins out to get the webbing and the rollers off, because they all needed to come off, because they were obviously, I was going to clean them sort of individually, and we were going to sort of paint them up as well and make them sort of look nice. And the reason I was told that we were doing that was because if it's all painted up and looks nice, they can sell it for more money. So, I mean, you know, whatever, you know. So I just did, you know, as I was asked. Anyway, I'm inside the potato harvester. So I've gone into the shed, I've pulled the potato harvester, put you in the full picture. I've pulled it out and I've gone across the other side of the yard, right? So on the other side of the yard, you got all the concrete of the actual farmyard, and then you got like gravel. And on the gravel is like big stacks of bricks and roofing, you know, sort of panels and guttering and, you know, all that sort of stuff, right? So I'm going to be in no one's way over there, right? So I've decided that's going to be the safest place to you know, to do the work. I'm not going to be in anybody's way if anyone else comes down. So I've got out of the tractor, I've left the keys in the ignition, and that's my first mistake. But bear in mind, I've only been working on the farm a few months. We're going to have to pull over here because we were a bit too wide for that. Yeah, so bear in mind, you know, I've only worked on the farm for a few months, and is there a lot of traffic coming? Okay, that yellow van. Yeah, so I've worked on the farm, as I say, just a few months. So I've left the keys in the ignition. I thought there's no way the ignition's going to come on, you know, by itself. I'm inside the potato harvester. You know, I'm struggling to get the pins out because they're all rusty and caked in soil and everything else, you know. So I'm struggling to get them out. And next thing I know, the next sound that I hear is the tractor being started up. And I'm now panicking because if he switches it on, I'm going to be in... I'm going to have to go this way because it's wider. I should have folded the drill up. Oh, am I going to get through there? Ooh, that looks a bit dodgy. I might have to back up and take the drill off and fold it up. I really might have to back the drill up and take it off and fold it up. I don't think I'm going to get... No, I'm not getting through there. I might actually get the other way round, to be fair, because if I go in that way and then go across, I might make it. It's just because I'm too lazy to fold the drill up. Yeah, I can make it this way. That tree's not just far enough over so that I can actually get across. There we go. Yeah, so I've heard the tractor start up, and I'm thinking, and because I'm shouting in vainly, because there's no way, someone's gonna hear me shouting through, the noise of the tractor. And it was an old Case Maxim. I forget the numbers, but it was a really old Case Maxim that I had. Oh dear, I might not even get that. Oh, I don't know. It's open. And was it a 516 or something? I can't remember the model of the Case Maximum that we had, but yeah. So I'm sort of, and I'm panicking now, and because I'm trying to get out, and the quicker you're trying to get out of something, the slower it is, because you're getting your feet caught up in it and everything else. And literally on that, with that happening, literally on that, the boss man comes into the yard, and I don't know why sometimes they open when you press them and sometimes they don't. It's really frustrating. And he's come into the yard, and of course he's, he sort of says to Ray, who has got on the tractor, he says, "Where's James?" And Ray says, "I don't know, I ain't seen him." And then Anthony says, "Well, he's supposed to be here cleaning this." And he said, "Well," he said, "I'm now taking it off." Like he said, but he said, "Oh, that's," and it's not that I could hear them as clearly as what I'm making out. So what's happened is I'm now being sort of told this retrospectively, and apparently Ray was about to start the potato harvester up, because he could see that one of the belts was twisted. But it was twisted because I'd started to take the pins out, and of course it was sort of kind of being pulled the way of where the pins were still in. Hence the reason why I was having so much trouble getting the pins out, because obviously the weight had now transferred on one side, rather than sort of taking one out, them. What I should have done was take one out each side as I was going along, but I didn't. I took all one side out, and then I was sort of struggling to get the other side out. But like I said, I'm no mechanic, and I'm not sort of very good at that sort of stuff. And Anthony had said, like, well, just turn the tractor off until we know where he is. And of course then they sort of come and they're shouting, and because I'm still shouting, and like, it's a brown pants moment, because I genuinely thought like I was going to be killed, like. And yeah, they basically shouted at me for God knows how long. Actually 99%, we ain't going to get much more in there, so we'll take that. And we will turn the JCB off, there's no point having the engine running. And yeah, so they sort of shouted at me, and of course, said, like, what I should have done was, once I'd got it where I wanted it, taken the keys out and put the keys in my top pocket, or somewhere where no one else could get them, and only I could reach them, and that way I would have been okay. But yeah, it was a very scary moment. And then a couple of so we had a case, is it 1455 XL, I think the number. I'm not very good with the old tractor numbers. The newer tractors I'm fairly good with, but the older ones not so much. And we had as I say, one of the I'm sure it was a 1455 XL or something like that, case tractor. And we also, as I've said before, had some David Brands, where we had a 996, an 886, an 885, and I think we had one 775, but the 775 was a show tractor, so it didn't get used on the farm, because we would, on tractor runs and stuff like that, we would take that out, and we had like a Dexter, Ford Super Dexter, a couple of Alice Chalmers, a couple of John Deere A's, he collected tractors like the boss, and so we used to show them and what have you, and take them on tractor runs and what have you. I used to love that. I absolutely used to love that. I'm not really into old stuff, I've got more into old stuff since I've been doing my 1950 series. I've got to be honest. I've started taking much more of an interest, but before that I wasn't really into it. But I used to love driving them on tractor runs and shows and sort of stuff like that, and round rings, or at country shows and what have you. And so the biggest problem with those tractors was all of the tractors that I've mentioned was, apart from the Ford Super Dexter, because the seat was far enough forward that you'd sit virtually over the pedals, but all the other tractors I couldn't reach because the seats were so far back. And I'm about 5'11", but I couldn't push the clutch fully down if I sat sort of back in the seat where I was meant to be. I had to sit on the edge of the seat to get the clutch all the way down. And the amount of times that I was trying to put stuff on, definitely the 996, trying to put stuff on, and my foot would either sort of slip off the clutch or would sort of move, or my leg would jerk and I'd go flying forward. Well, a lot of our sort of older implements, that the 996s and the 886s and the 885 would go on, were under like really old-fashioned lean-tos with the posts down at, sort of look like the 19 sort of 50, 60, 70, 80s football stands, with the big posts coming down. The amount of times I either very nearly hit one, and the amount of times as well that I dragged implements with me, like because my foot had come off the clutch. So in the end, what we had to do in the end, because it was sort of quite dangerous, was we had to get John, who I worked with. We had to get him to put the implements off for me, so I didn't kill no one or break nothing. But yeah, it's it was a bit dodgy and it wasn't very good. Now fast forward to the second farm, and this is where a couple of serious injuries did happen, but thankfully up until the other day no one was killed. So the first one was, we were tate harvesting. We had a self-propelled Grimmy and we had two trail potato harvesters, one Grimmy GT 170 and one Standen. It's the blue one. I think they're Standens, aren't they? Potato harvester, which I'd never seen until I got to the second farm. And normally I would drive the GT 170. So normally I'd be on there, but we were getting towards the end of the season. The main potato harvester, Steve, he would drive the Grimmy, the self-propelled one, and we were getting towards the end of the season and his Grimmy had broken down. And so they said to me, Steve's going on your tractor, you go on the tractor and trailer, just because his has obviously broken down. So he's like, yeah, all right, no problem. Like, and all was good, and we've been doing this for a day or two, while we were waiting for parts to come in for the self-propelled Grimmy. And I goes off to the farm to empty, obviously, my potatoes, my trailer. And on the way back, or just as I'm leaving the farm, the other tractor and trailer's now coming in, because I do remember that year potatoes really did yield fantastically well. So another trailer was coming back, and then a little way down the road, sort of, I don't know, a couple of miles, 3 miles down the road, I met another one coming back, and I get, because the stand-on was still going, so we had, I think it was like 6 tractors and trailers, or 6 or 7 tractors and trailers sort of running backwards and forwards, but each machine had numbers, and so like I was on sort of tractor and trailer number 2, so I always worked with number 2 harvester, and then 3 with 3, and if we had 4 with fairly self-explanatory. And I get to the field and can see the Grimmy sitting over the far end, and sort of drives round, because there was no other tractor and trailer in the field, and I drive round and it was a really big field. I think the field was like something like sort of 80-90 acres. It was quite a big field, and the Standon was sort of one end of the field and the Grimmy was the other end of the field, and so I've sort of got round now, and when I've got round, as I'm coming towards the tractor and trailer, there's no driver, and so I'm thinking, oh, he's probably gone to the loo or, you know, whatever, do you know what I mean? Like, so I didn't really think nothing of it, and pulls up alongside, can't see him nowhere, and I'm sort of sat there and I've got my flask out and I'm having a drink and I'm having a wafer, you know, and I'm sort of sitting there, got my music on, you know, I'm well happy. Anyway, 5 or 10 minutes has passed, still no, like, you know, thingy. So I gets on the CB. So I says to, I think it was Gary that was driving the Standon Takeout. So I says, "Have you seen Steve?" And he said, "Well, he's on his on the Takeout." And I said, "Well, I've pulled up alongside." I said, "I've been here about 10 minutes and I've seen nothing of him." He said, "Oh," "I don't know." He said he was there like the last time we, you know, he said because we virtually turned around together. He said so. He said like he was there, you know, a little while ago. So I said, "Well, yeah." I said he was here last time I left, you know. And they said, "Well, get out and have a look for him," like, you know. So anyway, I sort of then gets out of the tractor and you know, starts to have a look for him, and I can just hear this screaming, and because I then sort of look up. And on top of the, and I don't know how I hadn't seen him, but I guess I had no real reason to look at the sort of top of the Grimmy, and because he was on the top bit where the doors are, and he had the doors open, and what he'd done was he'd opened one of the doors, and then fallen through, and his foot had gone into the webbing and twisted, and it had virtually cut his foot off. Like it was like a proper, you know, it was a proper job, as I always say. You know, he hadn't sort of lightly done it, because he's screaming. Because then I'm like, you know, I'm sort of ringing an ambulance and what have you know, whatever else, and then I gets into the tractor and I sort of shouts to the other lads, and of course they come flying down the field, and you know, we're sort of trying to comfort him and what have you, and you know, sort of asking him what happened, and he was in and out of consciousness because of the pattern, the amount of blood, honestly, it was unreal. You know, I'm not squeamish with blood, not at all. It doesn't bother me. You know, I'm like, you know, my little boy, I mean, he has sort of really bad nosebleeds all the time, and it doesn't bother me. You know, I just sort it out. You know, it's no problem. And yeah, as I say, I'd got to, you know, sort of looking at it, and he when he sort of come round again, he would then go, "Is it bad?" And sort of all the other guys we'd all sort of look at each other and we'd all sort of shake our heads and sort of say, no, don't say anything. And we was going, no, I'm sure it's going to be fine. I'm sure it's going to be fine. You know, so we've called an ambulance. You know, they'll help you get it out. You know, we're not going to move you, mate. It's probably best, isn't it? And he's like, he goes, it's really bad. He said, like, really, really bad. He said, because I can't feel my foot. And yeah, it was not nice. And as I say, given what happened at the weekend, I don't know the full details. But he got caught up in machinery. Now, being the worker that it is, and being the time of year that it is, even though I don't know for sure, so I'm just surmising and sort of guessing at this stage, I've got a feeling he got pulled into a baler, because he was our baler operator. He did all our baling. And I've got a feeling that's possibly what's happened. All I've been told is that he was killed. And that would be my guess. And they didn't tell me what machine, but they just told me that he'd been killed and that he'd been sort of pulled into a machine. And the last sort of kind of story that's relevant to myself that could have ended so very differently was, again, on the first farm. Myself and John, who I work with, we were out drilling, and it was a fairly easy day. We were a long way in front, you know, weather was still set fair. We didn't need 2 power. You know, John was quite happy to sort of do a bit and then come and have a ride in the tractor with me, and you know, for an hour or 2 hours while I got in front again, and then he'd go off and then he'd do a bit more drilling and what have you. You know, we were comfortable. We were, you know, we were well ahead, and we'd also we'd nearly got drilling finished for the autumn light, and anyway, John's in his track, he's drilling in, and he's sort of, you know, happily catching me up. And as I've picked up at the end of the field, I've looked behind me, and my power hammer's got loads and loads and loads and loads of string all wrapped around the tines, and obviously they will rip bearings out. So I thought, you know, stop and unblock it. I thought, got time, you know. So on the draft and control box inside the tractor, I lift the hitch up as high as it will go, and I did this because I thought that way I can get underneath it, right? And again, you know, it's silly, I know, and like I say, you know, I got lucky again. I get to underneath the power hammer, I'm laying on my back, I'm looking up at all of the tines and the spikes and the everything else that are just above my head and sort of, you know, on the sort of top part of my chest. And I'm, you know, busy unwrapping, and it was so tight I could, you know, and I'm pulling and the power hammer shaking and wobbling and everything else, you know, and of course I'm, you know, sort of, as I say, pulling and twisting and, you know, sort of, and it's all wobbling and shaking and rattling, and, you know, because I'm giving it a right good go trying to get all this string off. And from nowhere I hear John's tractor and I hear the engine, and I just assumed he was like turning round, or he'd got out to look to see how much seed he'd got or whatever. Next thing I know, he's grabbed hold of my feet and dragged me. I don't know how far he dragged me, but he literally dragged me a long way away from much, and he was effing and jeffing at me, and he was proper going at me. And it was only after, when, you know, I sort of stood up and I was like, what the, you know, do you think you're doing? Like, you know, do that to me, you know, like, and sort of getting quite excited as well. And then he sort of turned me round. He went, look at that. So I looked at it and I went, yeah. I said, what? And he goes, what happens if your hydraulics fail and that drops to the floor? So I said, well, it drops to the floor. He said, you were laying underneath it, you beep, 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 beep. And then it dawned on me. Then I realised how stupid I'd been. You know, he said, like, yes, the string needs taking out, but go back to the bloody farm, you know, put jacks underneath. So we have like sort of tripod jacks, and they fit underneath the arms of the tractor, so that the tractor of the arms couldn't drop if the hydraulics failed, or if, you know, whatever. So they couldn't drop. And then we also had tripod jacks that used to go underneath the power at certain points, so that couldn't drop as well. So that if something gave way, all that would literally happen is that it would just fall onto the jacks and it wouldn't go nowhere, because you'd have the tractor holding it as well as these jacks holding it. And they were really good, and several times I'd seen, you know, why the farmer insistent on using them, because of, you know, the way they'd sort of stop things from sort of dropping and falling. And yeah, I'd sort of went back to the farm that day, and I was proper shook up, because it just hadn't occurred to me until it was pointed out to me, and then I suddenly realised how stupid I'd been. You know, and it was a very frightening, you know, sort of realisation that, you know, that could have ended so differently for me. Let me just look. Yeah, I am. So I'm having trouble seeing the mark again because of the bloody trees. I hate trees in Farming Simulator. I really do. Mainly because the workers are not intelligent enough to avoid them, but also because as well, they do make really good shadows, really realistic shadows, but I can't see me mark. You know, it's a bit annoying. But yeah, so as I say, it was not good. And I just I thought I'd do a video like this where I do just sort of highlight to everyone. And it's funny as well because it comes a week after my little boy said, "Oh, I'd love to play on those bale stacks because bales are really soft, so if they fall on you, they won't hurt you." He's only 8, and it was like, no, they weigh the same as a small car. If they fall on you, that's it. And he was quite shocked, and and then he was like, he goes off to his mum and says, "Oh, Dad says, if they fall on me, that they'd hurt me." I'm rubbing out my tram lines here, and because Mum had to sort of then explain to him, that actually, yeah, Dad's not, sort of lying to you. That is what would happen. But anyway, I literally just have had the memory warning come up, so I'm going to have to end the video here. And thank everyone for watching and listening. If you've got to the end, you've done brilliant. As I say, I just thought it was worthwhile sort of highlighting the dangers of working and being around and on a farm, and things to look out for, not only to keep yourself safe, but to keep others safe as well. So I just thought it was a well worth sort of topic to talk about. But as I say, I have got to end the video here because the memory warning has just come up. So thanks ever so much for watching. If you haven't done already, please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. It really does help the channel. And all that's left for me to say is thanks ever so much for joining me on this episode. I've really enjoyed having your company, and I can't wait to see you again on the next one. Bye for now.